Every time I see my father work on his model trains, I think about that train ride in 2001. We would say farewell to our family and friends, not knowing when or if we'll see them again. And it was here that I noticed the colour of the sky was this bright pink, so I captured it on film for the first time. 10 years would pass before I captured the sky again. This time, I was also greeted by that pink glow. Inspired by the events that occurred on that balcony that morning, I spent the next 10 years capturing sunrises, searching for that pink glow. Along the way, this is what I found. On July 28, 1981, it is estimated that 700 million people watched Princess Diana walk down the aisle. At that very moment, our family of 4 was crossing the South China Sea in a fishing boat similar to this one. It is estimated that 200 to 400,000 people never made it across that sea, and I can understand why. My sister was 1.5 years old at the time, and I was 3 months. I don't remember any of it. Inside the refugee camp, my baby brother was born. And after 1.5 years without identity, we became Australian. It was here on the steps of the Opera House do I have my first memory of being scared by these birds. From a young age, our parents wanted us to know about the journey, but beyond just knowing, they wanted us to understand. So 15 years after they left, they brought us back home to Vietnam. It was a time when letters were still handwritten and the internet was in its infancy. And it was here that my dad brought home a video camera for the first time. I don't have footage of it, but the first time I met him, he wrapped his arms around me and he cried and cried. I couldn't understand why this man who I've never met was crying so much. We would spend the next 6 weeks learning from him about our journey, about our family history, and who we were. We visited the route that we took to sea, and I saw how we sailed due east towards the rising sun. We would go for boat rides and experience firsthand what the conditions would have been like on those boats. After experiencing 6 weeks of post-war Vietnam, in front of the camera, we would pose in our various ways. But it was behind the camera, in our candid moments, did our true emotions reveal themselves. When it was over, we all said our goodbyes to him. He told us that he felt like he was losing us all over again. As we headed towards the train station, we promised that we shall return to him. What I gained from my first Vietnam trip was learning how to use this machine that could capture and store memories and play it back to you. I was fascinated by what the possibilities that this video camera could do. So I took that video camera with me to capture as many memories as I could.
This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. This is just crazy. Just look at it, this whole crowd here to look after us and everything as well.
Like we promised, every few years we'd return to Vietnam to visit him. Often we'll bring friends home with us to experience the Vietnam as we knew it. Every time I came back to Vietnam, I'd bring a new camera or a new toy. Technology was changing so fast. By 2010, it brought us closer to him. Inevitably, his time would run out and he would lose his life in that very room. After his passing, I would look back at this memory of him, where I promised him that I would make sure that he would be remembered. Beyond the picture on the wall, my grandfather will be remembered in video, so that his descendants will know who he was and could be influenced by him. So I dug deep and made a 7-minute short film and entered into the local film festival. The film made the top 14 out of 400 entrants. The film proved that all you need is a handheld camera and a story to make it into the film festivals. The film highlights a 9-second candid moment between my father and his father, where they were holding hands. That moment, the memory, the impact that it had on me would have been lost forever if I didn't have my video camera on. The view that I had of him was that he was a soldier who was on the losing side, and after the war he would leave his father for a journey on a wooden boat where he would risk the lives of his wife, his daughter and his son for a better life in Australia.
Saigon was now encircled, and South Vietnamese troops could not move out more than 10 miles along any road. Beyond that, the communists were waiting. Outside the American embassy, the wise, the wealthy, and those with any known American connections had been queuing night and day, demanding, pleading for a visa and a ticket for a seat on the United States evacuation planes flying out of Ton Son Nhut Airport.
The docks on Tuesday morning were crammed with thousands of Vietnamese desperate to escape from Saigon by any means possible. The harbour was full of small cargo ships, full of people, whose only way out now was this desperate, perhaps suicidal attempt. People, mostly families, pleaded with us for a seat, and they hung to the coach.
Newport Bridge, spanning the Saigon River on Highway 1, was the last the communists had to cross to enter the capital. We didn't know it then, but this was the last fight. 500 or 600 troops on this bridge, fighting probably a dozen or so, maybe 20 at the most.
I was 15 and she was 16 when we were taken back home for the first time. We were different. We were westernized children, but at least she made an effort to connect with him. You could say that I was someone who was possessive of my possessions and treated my own cousins with a considerable lack of respect. Despite the distance between him and I, he still chose to guide me to understand the consequences of my behavior. But it was my sister who started to film. I noticed her standing there filming this flower, so I took the camera off her and I filmed one too. And together, through the lens, did my sister and I capture the consequences of the Vietnam War. It was here that I started to notice the relationship between my father and his father, and how valuable a simple meal was to them. And it was here in this candid moment that I truly understand what those 15 years apart truly meant to them. Because the truth of the matter is, I knew he could have walked those stairs on his own. Towards the end, I no longer saw my father as a soldier who turned refugee who escaped, but a man who was able to deliver peace to his wife and children. Because the fact is, he was actually born the year the war started. It had taken us 15 years to get home, and the day finally came when we had to return back to Australia. We all held our emotions in place, but it was in this moment that my sister showed me what true beauty really meant. We left as westernized children, but I believe we came back to Australia as adults with a door open to all cultures. Another 15 years would pass, and everything that we learnt in those few weeks in the summer of '96 stayed with us. By now his health was deteriorating quite rapidly, so we decided to take him to his favourite beach where he waited all those years for us. That morning, to honour the time that was lost, I decided to do one last time lapse of the last sunrise he ever saw. He was born at the start of the First World War, and for almost a century he witnessed man's inhumanity to man. War directly affected his children and grandchildren, but despite this, he dedicated his entire life to the healing sciences, in which he appreciated evidence-based practices. So when the time came, I travelled home one last time. I held his hand, and the last thing that I was able to share with him was the candid moments in our home videos that proved to him that though his life was going to end, that his love will be eternal. From the time this photo was taken, every time I see the sun, I think about him. And until the day he passed, I tell him stories about a very special person that I had met. It was around this time that I realized there was time to start my own family. So I met a girl and I bought her some flowers. Her name is Lan, and I liked her eyes. Following his passing, and as it was getting serious, I decided to bring her home to Vietnam to meet family and friends, and to introduce her to new experiences in my hometown. Here we would meet Chu Lam, one of Dad's closest friends, as Dad would be into his model trains. Chu Lam would be into his model boats. As I got to know Lan, we realized how similar our families were, and that her family too were refugees. Lan's family is of Chinese heritage, and they would flee China following the Japanese invasion of World War II. They were settled in Saigon only to have to endure another 20 years of the Vietnam War, only having to flee again following the Vietnam War. From the stories that I told him, I believe my grandfather liked Lan very much. Though my grandfather was no longer there, we could feel his spirit everywhere we went. If only he could see this flying camera I brought home, he would have really liked it. Lan got along with everyone very well, and she was willing to try new things. And it was here that Chu Lam showed us the ingenuity of the Vietnamese people. It was such a fantastic day. His boat, my plane, fresh seafood and plenty of beer. And for 2 years, she kept that orchid in bloom. So there was only one thing for me to do. So I found a spot symbolic to both families. Did what any man would do. So on Australia Day 2013, I asked her to come with me on a boat ride in the harbour. We got married on the 8th of October 2015, and under pink skies, we danced the night away. And by August 2019, something very magical happened. On the 8th of March 2020, we welcomed our daughter, his great-granddaughter, into the world, and under the sunlight, we danced with joy. As there is sunshine, there's also storms. Due to health reasons beyond my control, for a 4-year period of time, I was unable to work and unable to support my family. And as such, I'd fallen into a deep depression. Depression for me meant that though the sun would rise, I would no longer care. For over a year since my daughter's birth, I would lie in bed. I would have very little contact with her. I would liken depression to being alone on a boat in the middle of the night with your engine dead and no compass or radio. A dreadful feeling beyond words, with an easy way to end it all. I wouldn't wish depression upon my worst enemy. And then one day something happened. At my lowest point, I saw an angel. This angel appeared behind the heater in my room. The heavens sent in a ray of light from the sky and through my window, but I could not see it. But the angel could see it. The angel reached out her hand to catch the ray of light and then proceeded to dance around it. I felt that this angel was guiding me towards this ray of light to let me know that there is hope. It sounds unbelievable, but for some strange reason that morning, I happened to have my camera on. And no one would have believed the story unless the camera was rolling. Yeah, light. As I watched my angel dance around that ray of light, memories came flooding back to me, and I knew I had a story to tell. Following that morning, I got the help I needed to treat the depression, and in time, I was able to return to work. To celebrate this, as often as I could, every day I would return home from work, I would leave my camera on. Gracie! Gracie! Hello, Gracie. How are you? She's too young to understand it, but one day I'm sure she'll know how important that little ray of sunlight and her dance around it meant to me. I know it's just a coincidence, but I'd like to think that that day, that ray of light, how it came to be and how she saw it, that someone was watching over me. So much so that I felt compelled to bring them both home to pay him a visit. As for that journey on the sea all those years ago, though I don't remember it, I choose to believe that as the sunlight lit the skies every morning, it would have been a beautiful sight for all those who endured it. And though we left family behind, we were always connected by that sun, and it would only be a matter of time before our love would bring us back together again. I'm now the same age as my father when he returned home to Vietnam all those years ago. And my father is the same age as his father. All I can say is that time travels very fast, so capture it as often as you can. And one day, tell a story about the people who matter most. Your descendants will thank you for it. And if you ever visit my hometown of Nha Trang, I'd highly recommend a seafood lunch on the floating markets. As for the effect of that pink sky, I've asked meteorologists if there's a name for it, and to date, there is no term to describe it. So I guess I'll call it the grace.